Welcome back to Notre Dame Day 2024. I'm Allison Hayes. Democracy is in crisis here in the United States and around the world. Polarization is high, trust is low, and public discourse is toxic. Notre Dame, recognizing that it is uniquely qualified to respond to this crisis, has established the Notre Dame Democracy Initiative. Joining us now to discuss the Democracy Initiative is Director David Campbell, the Packey J. Professor of American Democracy. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. And first things first, we want to find out, what are you wearing here today?
Well, I wanted to tell you about my shirt, which I just received myself not 30 minutes ago. It says Social Capital Enthusiast. I received this at a student event that a colleague of mine, Professor Jamie Bleck, hosted. It's a trivia night. She's bringing students together across different lines and groups and classes to have this experience together to build what is known as social capital, which is the idea that when people come together, they come to trust one another, and it's actually what forms the cornerstone of a healthy democracy. So it seemed fitting that I would wear it tonight.
It's perfect for what we are doing here.
Yes.
Yes. Well, let's get into some topics here. I want to get into the nitty-gritty with you. Notre Dame has a history of doing a lot to support democracy with the Rooney Center for American Democracy, the Kellogg Institute for International Studies, and the Washington, D.C. program. Now, this year, the focus of the Notre Dame Forum was the future of democracy. With all of this democracy-focused activity already happening on campus, why do we need to have this initiative?
Well, the short answer is because both in the United States and around the world, sadly, more and more people are questioning the value of democracy. And Notre Dame is in a unique position to speak to why democracy matters, which I will stress is not a partisan issue. Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, we can all agree, I would hope, that preserving the democracy that we have here in the United States as well as around the world is a cause worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Well, and tell us, what are the biggest challenges that you're facing with democracy, both domestically and abroad?
Well, I would say that one of the biggest challenges is simply the confidence that people have that democracy can deliver for them. And what we see, not only in the United States, but around the world, is that unfortunately, it's often young people who are the most likely to question whether this whole democracy thing is worth it. And I fear that's because often when they look out at the world, they don't see politicians putting policies into place that match the way they think the world should work. What they hear are extreme voices, not the moderate middle. That's where most people are. An effective democracy allows those people in the middle to have their voices heard as well.
Well, the main pillars of the initiative are research, education, and convening. Can you tell us just a little bit about each of those elements? How do these pillars support the initiative, and how do they interact? And why not just focus on one of these?
Well, the reason we want to focus on all three is that at Notre Dame, we take seriously our charge to be a world-class research university. We also take seriously our charge to be a leading undergraduate institution. That's at the heart and soul of what Notre Dame does. And we are in a unique position to bring people here to campus who maybe wouldn't come together in other places. Notre Dame can speak to issues that maybe other institutions are reluctant to, and we can bring people here to talk to one another because we have credibility with folks on all sides of issues, and that really is a special thing about the university.
Well, the Democracy Initiative is a campus-wide, multidisciplinary endeavor. How do you interest scholars who aren't political scientists to pursue democracy-centric research and teaching projects? Is it something that you need to do some convincing with them, or is this something that a lot of professors are already interested?
There is not a need for us to convince people of the importance of this. In fact, it is interesting to me in talking with colleagues outside of political science how much interest there is in the broad idea of what does it mean to be a democracy and what are the different flavors of democracy. You know, people might say, well, the United States is not a democracy, it's a republic. Well, that's true. It turns out being a republic is also a form of democracy, and so the historians can help inform us. People who study literature can help inform us. Computer scientists are studying misinformation and how that spreads. Well, that relates to democracy. This really is a theme that covers a lot of bases at the university.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about all of this. And what does the preservation of democracy have in common with Catholic school teaching, and how does it align with Notre Dame's mission?
Well, what I like to say is that it is under a democratic system that you're most likely to see human dignity and human flourishing. And if there's anything that the church stands for, and I'll say that I'm actually not Catholic myself, but it's something that I respect about Catholicism. If there's one thing the church ought to stand for, it's human dignity, and it's democracy that can deliver that. And so I would hope that Notre Dame can be a voice, not just in the United States, but around the world for that fundamental principle.
And you know, there are other universities studying democracy. How is Notre Dame's approach unique?
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that we're going to do not just one thing, not just scholarship, not just the teaching, not just the convening, bringing people together. We're going to do all three. And as I look around the country, I can point to universities that do one or maybe even two of those things. I cannot think of a single one that does all three, at least not to the level that we are doing them here, and will continue to do them.
And how about for students who maybe they might be intimidated? This is a topic that they're not comfortable with. How do you help make them feel more comfortable so that they can learn?
Well, earlier you mentioned that the forum this year was on the future of democracy. The events that we held for the forum this year, I think, really underscored how much, first of all, interest there is among undergraduates. But I think it also gave many of them, who are not necessarily political science majors, an introduction to the themes of democracy in a very accessible way. So one of the events, for example, was a film, a documentary about social capital and the importance of it, which is, you know, it's a serious film, but it has its sort of humorous moments, and I think that was a good on-ramp for students who, you know, might be a little reluctant to get into this. They watch the film, they feel like, oh, that's something I can relate to.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's really interesting to talk to you and helping with this initiative, moving it forward.
Well, I appreciate the time. I'm always happy to talk about the importance of democracy and my new shirt.
Your new shirt. All right. Well, now, thank you so much, Dave. Let's